What is up, Ozark fans? Welcome back to my channel. In this video, we are discussing the ending of Season 3, talking spoilers for the final few episodes and what it means for a potential Season 4. Now, earlier today, I did talk Ozark in a non-spoiler fashion, gave you all my score, my overarching thoughts, so if you want to go check that out, it's on the channel right now. And every single weekend, we talk Netflix and streaming, and occasionally, we dive deep into the endings and talk spoilers for these shows that, the shows that hit me hard like this one did. So if you all have thoughts, what in the world happened in those final few moments of Season 3? The insanity was through the roof. The final scene was shocking. We're going to dive into all of those things here in just a second. And of course, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to leave them a thumbs up button and subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more. Okay, so Ozark, Season 3. All throughout the season, we're diving into what is happening now with the casino. They finally got things up and running. Marty and Wendy are not only fighting for control of that casino, but they're fighting for control of their family as the internal struggle, and I said this in my other video, the stakes for the internal struggle were so much higher this season than the external struggles, and we still have those factors, absolutely. But when Wendy's brother Ben comes to town, that's when things started to take a turn for the worst for most of the characters, especially Ben, because, Ben, and that's where I want to start with spoilers here, because at the end of episode 9 in Season 3, Wendy makes the hardest decision you could ever make as, one, a character in this show, but two, just being a human being, to decide to take out your brother because, quote-unquote, your brother knows too much about what's going on within the Bird family. And when Ben started to discover these things, especially when he acted out at the casino, of course, punching Marty right in the face in front of everyone, going around telling this person and that person shady things are happening in the midst of the Bird family, and Ruth does everything she can to keep Ben quiet, or as quiet as she can keep him, but it isn't enough. Therefore, Wendy had to make the decision to take out her brother. And this is obviously something that is affecting her heavily because of the reaction shots we get in the car and the way that she's handling it in the follow-up episode, in episode 10, when she is basically as over this entire operation as one possibly can see, when we see her dressed in the exact opposite way that we expect Wendy Bird to be dressed, especially when this entire season she has kind of been at the forefront of the operation, whereas Marty, of course, has been working with the feds, and he was the one who, of course, originated the idea, but Wendy is now as driven, as focused as Marty ever was, and her relationship with Helen is what's carrying her to that point, and that is a big part of that internal struggle, but it's also what led her to make this decision, taking the life of her own brother, just to get the point across that we are the ones who can be trusted. We are the ones who are doing everything that it takes to keep this operation as steady as it can possibly be kept. And that is a bold statement, especially a statement made towards the Mexican drug cartel. Now, we'll get back to Navarro here in just a second, but we get to see Marty and Ruth disposing of the body, where they retrieve the ashes of poor Ben. Ruth, while devastated, is starting to get a tiny bit concerned and has this small intuition that maybe something more is afoot. Maybe this situation isn't as clear as it's made out to be, and Marty, being the shady guy that Marty is, you can never tell when he's telling the truth or not. Now, it sounds likely, just from that perspective, Helen is the kind of person that would make this decision, and she was involved, but that's not all of the information. Now, flashback to Wendy. She's doing a lot of drinking. She's struggling, and no wonder, but hey, yeah, you did this. You did this, Wendy. Meanwhile, Omar Navarro, being the kind-hearted soul that he is watching his child get baptized while his girlfriend is there. He's smiling, he's happy, until the opposing group comes in and basically shoots up the entire church. Well, not basically. They do shoot up the entire church, and his girlfriend is dead. Rest in peace to the girlfriend. That's obviously something that's going to put you in a bad mood. That, and having a conversation with Helen being someone who, is not pleasant to talk to. By the way, this is the point where Helen reveals to Omar that, she's cutting the Birds out of the entire casino operation, basically stating that she is somehow going to have them taken out. and not to dinner. Then a conversation of note happens between Wyatt and Ruth, and this is where the tide starts to turn, especially for the character of Ruth, and it gives us an indication as to where these two are going to end up next season, because we later see them partner with the character of Darlene, and Wyatt basically tells Ruth, listen, sometimes that gut feeling that you get when things, quote-unquote, are not right, sometimes things are just not right. And then he basically points out that the Byrds have done this before, and how often have you been onto or gotten right what they were lying about? And that's what leads us to the exchange later on in the episode when Ruth calls out Wendy for doing exactly what she did, and that was murdering her brother. Ruth being devastated because she was meant to end up with Ben in her mind, and she was in love with Ben, storms out and goes immediately to Helen, telling her that she wants out of the operation. Helen responds with, well, what if the Byrds were out? Would you want in? And that's when we basically confirm what Helen's plans are for the future of this family entirely. Now, flashback in the episode, we get a look at Sam as he asks the girl of his dreams to marry him, and then we realize that it's his mother. In the mother is the ring. Okay, it's a little weird. Then he gets arrested, so that's a great story to tell your kids. But it turns out that was only happening because Special Agent Miller needed some leverage against Marty. As much as she tries, she struggles to come up with anything, but they continue to have their back and forths, and you're rooting for that relationship to work because you can tell they actually genuinely care about each other. They're just both living in such different worlds, it's hard to come to terms with what's going on both sides. So back to Wendy struggling, she finally realizes that maybe she's drinking a tad bit too much, comes home, cries some more, gets yelled at by her son because of his connection with Ben, and basically wants to give up on everything. Let's see what Darlene's up to. Hey, well, look, it's Frank. Oh, okay. All right, she shot his groin. So, yeah, Frank throughout the entire season has not been the nicest guy to Ruth Langmore. So he does get what he deserves, but also, ouch! Come on. Wendy then receives a phone call revealing a bit of insight as to what Helen has been up to. Turns out she is indeed doing what I have been saying she is doing. Therefore, Wendy gets the guts, somehow, some way, to call Omar and basically tell him that Helen needs to be cut out of the deal entirely because they're trying to protect themselves by being on the good side of the Mexican cartel. It's a pretty good plan, and we see why here in a bit. Marty gets smart, goes back to Agent Miller, and reveals finally that he was indeed in Mexico because he's trying to do anything and everything he can to save his family. While Marty is there, Jonah is here at the home of lovely Helen, having a nice conversation with her about what exactly happened to Ben. Was it Helen or was it Wendy? Now, Helen has a way with words, and even with the gun pointing in her face, she slowly starts to reveal what Jonah already kind of knew, and that was the fact that his mother was actually behind the death of his uncle, another one of his best friends. Poor Jonah. I mean, the guy just can't catch a break. After Marty and Wendy figure out that they have to go to Mexico, they are left with no choice. They say goodbye to Charlotte, part ways, while Ruth and Wyatt are having a very interesting time out in the fields. Well, what fields are they in? Turns out Darlene had the bright idea of pitching a 50-50 split for her new drug operation with no other than Frank Cosgrove. That's right, the father of the man whose son's groin she just shot off. So, it's very risky. She tells him about her plans to build 3 new opioid treatment centers and how the building contracts are his if he wants to take the deal. This is her way of fighting the Byrd family, and this is the new operation in Season 4 that is most likely going to rise up against the Byrds and the Mexican cartel. So, you have a fight ahead of you. But now Darlene has Wyatt and has Ruth on her side. Now, the deal was not accepted at this point in time, but it's basically set up to turn out that way, and we can expect those 3 to bring as much as they can possibly bring for our heroes next season. And by the way, just to see Ruth on the other side of things finally, I mean, she's been fluctuating back and forth, but now that it's basically set up for her to be on the other side throughout Season 4, it is a tad bit upsetting, not in terms of the story in itself, but just as a fan of Ruth. I'm like, come on, Ruth, I want to root for you, but now I just don't think I can. Marty's on the phone with Agent Miller doing everything he can to save their skins, but he has no choice but to get on that plane. While he and Wendy are both believing probably the entire time there that their lives could be coming to an end shortly. Jonah embraces the ashes of his fallen friend. Once again, this is a character that has had to endure so much over the last couple of seasons. And as we finally catch up with our characters, Helen, Marty, and Wendy, the unthinkable happens. And just the way that this scene unfolds. I mean, the lack of a score underneath our characters walking in, the fact that Omar says, "Welcome. I hope you all had a pleasant journey." And the second he opens his mouth to say one more word, the gun goes off, the trigger is pulled, and it turns out it's not Wendy, it's not Marty, it's Helen who gets the bullet straight in her head. And I mean just like, dang. And watching this for the first time, I was so caught off guard that once the credits hit, I had to rewind the actual episode and rewatch this scene from the get-go. Let this scene build up once again. The intensity and all of the stakes are so high. The tension is raised to a level that is almost indescribable. And it turns out Helen gets the short end of the stick, meaning that Omar trusted Wendy when she told him what she did, meaning Omar is now completely in on the Byrde family. Maybe not Marty 100% just yet, but definitely Wendy, believing she is indeed the brains of the operation. And with what went down in the first few episodes of this season, the internal conflict and the struggle, not only with their marriage and the counselor, but with their business with the casino, the fact that Wendy wanted to expand and Marty did not. Are we on track for yet another strain in this relationship with the cartel? Now in full force favor of the Byrde family and with Helen out of the picture. And I've been seeing the question asked online, why did Helen go out so suddenly? Because while from the outside looking in, it looked as if she was essential to this operation, but Wendy was slowly becoming kind of what Helen was, a completely different department, obviously, but just that leadership that Helen had over the cartel. That's what makes Wendy and Marty the right people to take her place with this aspect of the business. And it seems like next season is on track to have Darlene's operation go up against the Byrde's operation with the FBI still in the mix. And while that will most likely be the main conflict of the next season, say we get 2 more seasons, what I believe will truly be what inevitably takes down this entire operation or allows one person to win out over the other is the fact that the relationship between Wendy and Marty is building to a point to where I believe they are going to turn on each other. Maybe not by the end of next season, but by the end of the show, it will be Wendy versus Marty. And it seems at this point, Marty is most likely going to end up on the side of the FBI, whether he has to take the years in prison for what he did or not. And Wendy could end up on the side of the cartel just because of where her character has progressed, especially after the death of her brother. That's what could push her over the edge. Albeit Marty is beginning to use his brain a bit more than his heart. You look in season 2 when he was planning on running, he had purchased the plane and everything, and then he made a snap decision. Well, in this season, it took a bit of character progression, but he finally got to the point to where he said, I am going to do what is the best for this family. I am going to do what is the smartest. It took some convincing from Wendy, yes, but it seems as if they're both on the same page right now. I don't know if that will last. I don't know if that will stick. While we'll have the overarching triangular conflict in the next season, I believe it comes down to Wendy and Marty, and that to me is the most fascinating battle of them all, and that's why Ozark Season 3 worked as well as it did. It isn't a perfect season of television, but it is easily my favorite season of Ozark so far because of the character development, because of the layers of the story, and everything in between. So I would love to know what you thought of this season down below. What did you think of the shocking moment at the end with the gunshot? How did you believe that was handled? Was it one of the better season finales you have seen? I believe that's the case for me. And what is your biggest and boldest prediction about Season 4 of Ozark? I would love to see and hear all of those things down below. Thank you guys for watching this video. Like I said, if you enjoy these videos, be sure to leave them a thumbs up. We will definitely do more. You guys are the best, and I'll see you soon.